Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to have a digital nomad dad. He's a dad, a digital nomad, and so much more. And we actually met in person in Bansko, Bulgaria. We were both speakers at the Bansko Nomad Fest. Unfortunately, both our talks were at the same time in two different venues. So Palle, I missed your talk, but I have to find the replay somewhere. But he is a uber traveler, and he's going to be sharing so much information with us on travel tips and going to off the beaten track countries, maybe. So Palle Bo is a longtime radio producer from Denmark, podcasting pioneer. He's been doing it for a long time. Author, speaker, and a dad of two grown children. I think they're in their 20s now. So while he didn't technically world school them during their childhood because they were going to school in Denmark, they went on lots of holidays during their school breaks, and not just as tourists, they really traveled. And so I consider that world schooling because they were learning while they were doing it. So they did travel a lot together, and they still do. One of his kids even joined him on a trip to North Korea, which I watched, or I listened to the podcast. It's super interesting. My mother was actually born in North Korea. Their family escaped before the war. Yeah, I have a history there. So anyway, so Palle at the age of 50 made a big decision. He sold most of his belongings, his house, car, everything, and he became a digital nomad, traveling full-time with the goal to visit every UN nation in the world and every state in the US. So wait, I've only visited a handful of US states, and I'm American, so it's amazing that he's been to so many places. So Palle will share lots of travel tips regarding planning, logistics, booking, packing, safety, working as a digital nomad, and a lot more. So welcome, Palle. How are you?
Thank you so much. So great to see you again.
Great to see you too. Yeah, it was just a few months ago that we were hanging out in Bansko together, and that was
and we've been talking for a couple of years, I think. So I don't even remember why and how we started communicating, but travelers unite.
Exactly. And we have a lot of friends in common. So I think we were Facebook friends. We chatted a little bit, and then it was really great to meet you in real life. I love that, because I am Facebook friends with a lot of digital nomads and world schoolers. And then eventually we start meeting up, which is awesome. So Palle, tell us a little bit about your background in Denmark. I mentioned a little bit about it. You were in the radio business for a long time. You had a radio station. You started podcasting. So talk about your life before you started traveling full time.
Yeah, well, my first background was graphic design. I worked in agencies and was a trained graphic designer, but then my love fell to radio, first as a hobby and then a full-time job. And I did my first radio show in January 85. So just aging myself. I started when I was 5 years old. Now, and then a couple of years later, we decided, me and a couple of other guys, we decided to apply for a license and started our own radio station. Not that we wanted to build a company, but more like we wanted to be able to decide what goes into the radio and make the kind of radio that we wanted to listen to, and maybe our friends wanted to listen to, and maybe some cute girls wanted to listen to. So that was the basic idea. Oh yeah, that was in 89, I think. Yeah, and now I'm still a co-owner. I have 10% of that company now, and now we operate 17 radio stations in Denmark. So now it is a company, but I got nothing to do with it. I'm just a silent partner, and whenever they're doing well, they send me a little bit of money. But I'm consider it more of my retirement fund, because yeah, I'm part of a company, and that's always funny.
That's awesome.
And then I went on to, I worked at that station up until 99, and then I worked at a production company. I got more into producing radio commercials, high-end radio commercials. Then I was the station manager of another station. And then I started my own company in 2007, where I produce radio commercials, and now it's only podcasting. I do podcasting and a little bit of voiceover work.
Cool, cool. Yeah, so I think a lot of digital nomads or people wanting to be a digital nomad, they're looking at podcasting. So I know you have a lot of content, and we'll talk about your website later. So hopefully they can go and listen and learn there. So tell us about how you started traveling, like more than just a holiday. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, it was when I could see that, well, I'd lived in the same city all my life, which is not the capital. It's a city with 60,000 people called Randers in Denmark. And I stayed there. I got divorced from the mom's wife, the mom of the
Your kids.
you know what I mean? The kid's mom,
Yeah,
the mom's wife. No, the kid's mom, years ago when they were like 10 years old or so. And they stayed with me half the time, and they stayed with her half the time. So as long as they went to school and stayed at home, I would be living there. Even though when I started my company, it would have made so much more sense to move to Copenhagen, where the big clients are, the big agencies. But I'm first and foremost a dad, so I stayed there as long as they stayed at home.
right.
And then in 2012, I could see that, okay, there comes a day when they're both out and living their own in their own apartment. And I was toying with the idea of going to live in another country for 2 years, just to try it out, or somewhere else. Then I met a friend when I was at the Cannes Lions that said that, oh, you should go to Cape Town. He just came back after 2 years in Cape Town, or wrote a book about that, wrote a book about advertising. And he said, you should go to Cape Town. It's a great country, and they take the radio medium very, very serious. So it would also be a good place to maybe get your foot into working with some international clients. And I thought, yeah, I've never been there. So in 2013, I went there for 2 months just to try it out. What's it like? And I wanted it to be more than just a week or so. So that would be a vacation, but more like, can I live here? Can I do my work here? And it was absolutely wonderful. Cape Town is still one of my absolute, well, the favorite city in the world for me. I love it there, and it's like my second home. And when I came home, I thought, well, I can work anywhere. And it was not on my radar that there's a thing called digital nomads at all. I didn't even know the term. So I just thought, oh, I invented something cool. I can work anywhere. I can just bring my computer and get online and work anywhere with what I do. So I still had a couple of years until they would, the last one would graduate and move out. That would be in 2016. So I had my office and my studio in my house. So I put a world map on my kitchen wall. And every time I poured myself a cup of coffee, I would take a pen and just make a few dots on where I wanted to go, and started researching, buying travel books and watching YouTube channels, and really doing a lot of research. And then I got a bigger map and put it on my bedroom wall, like almost like a crime thing with lines out to this and this, and I got to go there. And I was really in planning mode for a couple of years. And I still thought it was going to be a 2-year trip around the world. Actually, in the beginning, I called my project Around the World in 80 Weeks, which is around a year and a half. I just thought it sounded funny. But then maybe it's too fast. So 2 years. And I planned a detailed plan on where I would be in those 2 years. And I started out, and a week into my journey, that plan was out the window, and I just went everywhere instead. And opportunities showed up, and then it became 4 years. And now it's been 7 years of totally full-time travel without having a home base.
Wow. And you decided, after that 80-week trip that you had all planned out. And I always tell people who do those big plans, like, you kind of need to leave a little room for spontaneity and flexibility. You might like a place and want to stay longer. You might meet people you want to hang out with. So maybe not plan too rigidly. But what made you have this idea to go to every UN country? And how many are there now? There's like 200 or so, or a little above.
Yeah, 193 if you're talking recognized UN countries. There are a few that are like observer states, but 193, that's what I'm going for. That actually came a couple of months into my journey when I was in Ukraine. A friend of mine who did that before he turned 28. He said, you should go for them all. If you don't get it, you don't get it, but at least you will have a goal, and you need to set a bigger goal. And I thought, yeah, I'm saying out loud that this is my goal. I don't know if I'm ever going to do it, to be honest. If don't tell anyone, but if I'm 95 and still have 10 more countries to go, I can still say while walking with my walker, it's still my goal, young man. But yeah.
That's amazing. I've been to almost 50 countries or 50 places. I do count Hong Kong, Macau, and they're now part of China, but they weren't when I was there, because I backpacked around the world mostly by myself.
They were never a country.
Well, I know, but it's like a whatever, a separate area. I counted it, okay? Yeah. And it was in 1998, 99, I backpacked around the world as a single younger woman, you know, sometimes with friends and family. But yeah, so, but a lot of my places I've gone to repeatedly. I don't have the goal to go to every place. I think it's awesome that you do, or at least as many as you can. But I want to go to more places. So I want to get, you know, I'm an experienced traveler, but I want to learn more from you. So tell us kind of, how did you do it? Did you do one continent at a time? Did you crisscross the world? What was your plan?
I crisscross around the world, and actually I try to update my journey with a yellow line, and it looks like spaghetti being thrown on the map. It looks crazy, and that was just these 7 years, and I'm not rushing it, and I'm not just ticking off boxes. For example, this year I'm only going to do one new country, and that was Belize. I was in for a month and a half ago, and I'm going back to places I've been before. My 2022, I did 20 new countries, but it's not like I'm just racing in and out of a country to take it off a box. It's all about the journey and the experience. So
you don't fast travel, because I see those people who go to every country around the world, or they're trying to, and they're just going for a day, which I think is kind of silly. You go all the way there, or they're a week.
It's very few people that are in that group that do that. Actually, next week I'm meeting a bunch of those people, like these really hardcore extreme travelers, and in a group called Nomad Mania, and I'm going on a trip with them, and they are really going in a lot to explore the country and get into the culture as much. There are very, very few, like a handful of people that do the thing, like just leave the airport and get a burger and then leave again. It's very, very few people that do that in that group, but it's a misconception that all the extreme travelers that are going for all the countries, they are like that, and it's absolutely not true. But I think it's interesting because you're doing this over many years, because some people try to go to every country within 3 years. So maybe they'll spend a week there or whatever. So you prefer to slow travel a little bit more than fast travel. Explain the difference for you. To call me a slow traveler would be wrong. Okay. What's the average of nomads? I travel very fast. Okay. Staying a whole month in a place is a long time for me. I'm in Krakow, Poland right now, and I'm here for 10 days. I was in Mexico for a month. That's a long time. I was in Belize for a month, but 2 different places. But my 2022, I slept in 105 different beds in 1 year. I moved a lot. If I count the countries I went back to more than one time that year, I was in 37 countries. In total, I was in 30 different countries in 22. That was a crazy year. And when I was in Bansko, I did a lot of interviews for my podcast with experienced nomads, and we had a whole episode about how fast do you travel, and most of them say, well, at least a month and preferably 3 months. And a lot of them, they say, I even would like to have a home base, and some even said, I have a home base. I still define myself as a digital nomad, but I have a home base or a hub where I travel in and out of. But most people, they travel most nomads travel much slower than me. I travel quite fast.
Yeah. And I think a lot of world schoolers, digital nomads, or just people with kids who are traveling, they start off, a lot of them, very fast. And then they find out that kids get really exhausted and cranky
Yeah.
often. I mean, it depends on the age of the kids and, you know, what they want. Because if they're teenagers and they really want to go for it and they have the stamina, great. But I really recommend to schedule in rest days and just stay home at your Airbnb or wherever you're staying and just chill out for a while and not make this a perpetual tourist situation. So, and I know that you've traveled with your adult kids, so you had a little experience there. So, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about visas, because some countries are really easy to get to. You know, you just show up, you show them your Danish passport, which is very it probably can easily go to a lot of countries. It's probably more of a powerful passport than a US passport. Some countries don't like
pretty
us.
pretty similar. Yeah.
Are they? Okay, so but certain places you need a special visa. They're hard to get to. So how do you figure that out?
Yeah, well, some of them you can apply for wherever I am in the world. Go apply for them online. But actually, when I was in Belize and I invited my oldest daughter to come spend 2 weeks with me, we were talking about going to Cuba. And as Danish citizens, we can go to Cuba, but it turned out that I had to be in Denmark and send my passport to the Danish embassy in Copenhagen for them to give me a visa. I was not going to send it all the way from Belize and hope that it would come back. So that was more tricky. It couldn't be done online, and there was no other way. I couldn't go into an office in another country. It had to be the one with a Danish passport. I had to go and do that in Denmark. So that was a little bit tricky, and I think it might be the same situation. I remember when I went to India, but that was many, many years ago. I had to go to Copenhagen when I was in Iran. I also had to be in the embassy in Copenhagen and have a meeting there. Same for the Russian visa. Not that I've had any plans on going to Russia anytime soon. So, but I don't know if that had changed. It might have changed since then, because that was like 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't remember the website, but there is a website where you can just go and put in your passport and where you're going, and it'll tell you whether
Yeah.
you or not you need a visa or what you have. Yeah, years ago, there was an extra week delay getting a visa to India, and I was in London at the time. So I had to stay in London longer, and it cut my trip to India shorter because I was going to meet people elsewhere. So that's kind of a pain. I think for the more tricky countries, like developing countries or countries that are they're just not friendly to tourists, like North Korea or whatever, you have to do that research a little bit longer, more in advance. And I didn't know that in Turkey, Americans, we have to pay $50 per person, even kids, to go there. And I knew that in advance, but I had friends who took a night train there, and in the middle of the night, they had to get out and get their phones at the border and pay for that $50 visa before they can cross.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned North Korea. Well, right now, the situation between you and them, I mean, the US and North Korea, is pretty tense.
Yeah.
But when I was there with my youngest in 2017, Americans could go as well. That came later, and it's for the rest. Most of the rest of the world, it's actually pretty easy. Not right now. I think they're still closed the borders because of COVID.
Right.
But because I have a good friend that you actually have as a guest in one of the upcoming episodes, Mette from Denmark. She's been to 192 countries, and she only needs to go to North Korea. So she's waiting for them to open the borders again. But actually, under normal circumstances, it's pretty easy for anyone else. Get a double entry visa to China, because you're going back to China. You can't go from North Korea to South Korea. So you're going back to China. So you have a double entry visa, and then just get an organized tour. I went with a company called Young Pioneers Tours that specialize in doing trips to weird places. They say on their website it's trips your mom don't want you to take. Something like that. But they're very professional, and you go in and you can't leave the hotel without a guide. You can't go walking around alone. You're with local guides all the time, and they only show you what they want you to see. So, and then you abide to a couple of rules. And I didn't bring all my professional microphones because that would make me look like a journalist. So I did an episode, but all of that is recorded on my phone, and that worked out fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I listened to that podcast because, again, I'm actually half North Korean. My mother was born there, and I would probably never go, not only because being a US citizen, but my grandfather was a capitalist and was jailed when the communists came over, and they had to get him out, and they escaped in a fishing boat before the war started. So he's probably on some blacklist, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh, they have a file on him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk. I mean, you're a European citizen. The Schengen zone is a little tricky for the rest of us who are not European citizens, and even the British now. So everyone knows, you have 180 days, and you can only be in the Schengen 90 days, and you can go in and out, but there's like a rolling time frame. There's a Schengen zone calculator that people can go to. And there are countries like the Balkans, some of the places, although Romania, Bulgaria, and Cyprus will become part of the Schengen in the future, which is a bummer. But those of us who do this Schengen shuffle will go to Turkey, Morocco, UK. Ireland is EU, but not part of the Schengen. So you don't have to deal with that. But I wanted to ask you about the digital nomad visas, because you and I have friends who are maybe starting to do that. I think right now there's 58 countries who have them, or they're going to soon. But I've decided it's not worth it because there's a lot of paperwork, some countries have really high demands for fees, or your income has to be a certain level. And then with kids, we have to make even more money. I mean, it depends on the country. And then some countries, once you're there 180 or so days, you have to pay income tax there. So I've decided not to do it. But do you have many friends that are looking into these digital nomad visas?
Yeah, and it's something it's not really relevant for me because I don't stay more than 3 months in a place. I can always get by with a regular tourist visa. But I do know of a handful of Americans that are living now in Lisbon, in Portugal, in order to apply for residency and get a Portuguese second passport, which would give them a lot more opportunities. But then they have to stay there a lot longer. And yeah, I've heard about all these nomad visas. I don't know a lot about it because it's not really something that's relevant for me right now. And I can stay wherever I want for as long as I want within those Schengen countries, apart from the ones that are not on that list. The only country I can't stay in that long is actually, funny enough, Denmark, because I'm not a resident in Denmark. I'm not a resident anywhere. So I don't pay Danish tax. So there's a limit to how long time I can stay, which is fair, to drive on the roads and all of that. And it's 42 days every rolling 6 month. So in total, 84 in a year, but it's I can't put them together and do 84 at once. It's 42 days. So that's the limit.
Yeah. Again, many digital nomads or world schools will deregister from their country, not only to no longer pay taxes, but also to no longer have to abide by their country's lack of homeschooling law, the homeschooling and schooling laws. So now in the US, we cannot deregister. We always have to file taxes if we make over 12,000 something a year as a single person. But there is this big tax break if we're out of the US, I think 330 days a year. And we're not a resident in another country. I mean, you can be, but we save a lot of money on taxes as long as we stay out of the US, like what you said, your tax country, normal country. Awesome. So let's talk about, do you have to adjust your travels to any other needs? Like you can work anywhere, the time zone doesn't matter, right? Any health issues, you're not traveling with pets. Anything that your health, if you have to get doctor's appointments, I mean, do you have travels?
Yeah, well,
what do you do?
Because I'm also not paying tax in Denmark. I'm not covered by the world famous Danish health system, where it's all included and everything. So I have to have my own insurance for that. Every time I go to Denmark, I'm going to Denmark in a couple of weeks. I'm going to the doctor and do a checkup. I take medication for high blood pressure, so I need a new prescription for that. And then I go to my old Danish doctor, and it's so weird that I have to pay to go to the doctor. It's something that's never any Danish people do, but yeah, they give me I pay for it, and I get a receipt, and I send that to my insurance company, and they refund the money. But yeah, that insurance covers all over the world, and even if I get hospitalized for a long time in the US, which could run into the millions very quickly.
Which
So
insurance do you use?
Well, it's a Danish company, and it's actually I signed it through the radio stations that I'm a co-owner of.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different situation than most people can do.
Right.
I know a lot of people they use safety wings or
Genki, IMG. I mean, there's a bunch of them.
yeah.
Cool, cool. Awesome. Okay. Do you consider climate or air quality or other things or altitude when you are choosing a country to visit?
It's not something I consider. I actually somebody told me that because I'm here in Krakow, and I absolutely love the city. It's one of my favorite European cities, and it's so great. And I spoke to a friend of mine, and he said, "Yeah, it's nice, but the air quality is very bad. It's one of the worst in the world." I said, "What?"
No.
I don't know. It might be on the list, and because they're using a lot of coal in Poland, so Warsaw and Krakow might be on that list. They actually used to be number one on that list, he told me, but they dropped a little bit down. But I'm in the old town, and there are hardly any cars in here, so it's fine, and it's not something that's bothering me at all. If it was bothering me, I would be looking at that before I went to a place. And yeah, altitude, I'm fine with that. I just published an episode from a trip I did in Bolivia to the Uyuni Salt Flats, and we were very high up in the Andes, like really high, and I could feel after 3 days that okay, I need to drink a lot of water, and I'm glad we're going down the mountain now, because I was starting to get a pounding headache and didn't feel that great. But that was after 3 days, so I'm pretty flexible as to where I go, and obviously I have to have very light clothes. I was in Mexico, and it was so hot and humid, you wouldn't believe it. It was like just sitting with my morning coffee outside doing nothing, I would be pouring sweat. It was so hot and humid already in the morning. And here in Krakow, I found my big jacket and my warmer hat. And every time I go outside, it's like that. So it's totally different climates, and I have to pack for everything.
Right. Yeah. I do not like humidity and heat. And so I really check the weather where I'm going, because I've been in so many places where I'm melting like you are. And it's just, I have to work. I'm not productive. Let's see. Anya says that. So she's saying your talk is just inspirational, and her favorite hobby is planning for our following trips. Eric asked a good question. Interested to know more about how to afford traveling to so many countries in such a short time frame. So let's talk about your budget, because you work, obviously you're a digital nomad, so you've probably got some income coming in. So how do you figure out how much you need to earn, or all of that, or spend?
Okay, Eric, listen to this, and everybody else. When I lived in Denmark, I had a house. It was not a big house. It was a house in the countryside. It wasn't that expensive, and it was very old. It was originally built in 1856, so it was not an expensive house. And if I compare what I used what I had of fixed expenses every month before food and pleasure, like everything, like insurance and heating, and because it's cold in Denmark, and the cable and the car and heating for the insurance for that, and everything that I had of fixed expenses before food and pleasure. And if I compare that to what I'm spending now on traveling from A to B, whether it's bus or plane or train or whatever it is, and accommodation. If I compare these two, I'm spending way less now, like way less. In some month, it's half of what I spent before.
Can you give us
But
some numbers? Because you're a single person, so you're not bringing a lot of kids. So how much are you, what's the range of what you're spending in
yeah,
euros or dollars?
I'm just grabbing my phone here. So in most month, it's around $2,200, $2,500 that I use in travel and accommodation. And if I was more slow travel, I could do that way cheaper, because you wouldn't spend that much on traveling and like plane tickets, and you would be able to get a better price on the apartment. I use Airbnb a lot, and if you get a month in a place, you get a monthly discount.
Yeah.
So I could definitely do it cheaper, and I have had a month where it would be way less because I was house sitting and staying in the same place, so I could do it a lot cheaper.
Right.
Things,
So
and that's
kind
also
of fast-ish.
Yeah, I'm traveling quite fast, so I could definitely do it cheaper. And the good thing is that if I go into a month where I'm losing a client and I get less income, I got so many more knobs I can turn. I can do house sitting. Don't travel as much. I can travel and go to a cheap country, and that way spend less money. When I stayed in Denmark and had my house, I had to pay those. The insurance didn't care if I had a bad month. I still had to pay the mortgage. I still have to pay all those things. So that wouldn't matter. And yeah, but now I can easily turn up and down. And then I'm still working. I'm doing a lot of podcasts for Lego, which is a great client to have on your resume. And whenever I got a new contract, I thought, okay, I got a little bit more money in the bank, so let me go do something great, like hot air ballooning over Masai Mara, or going on that helicopter ride in the at the France Glacier in New Zealand, or something that is more expensive. That I give myself that.
Yes. Yeah, you should once in a while. Again, as a family, that budget's living the way you do is going to be 2 or 3 times that, depending on how many kids you have. I mean, it does get a little cheaper per kid, because if they room in the same room or whatever, bunk beds, all that kind of stuff. Anya is asking about packing for different climates. So let's talk about what you pack. Do you pack light? Is it carry-on only, or do you check a bag?
I check a bag. I wish I could be one of those people that would do carry on only. My excuse is I got a lot of equipment for my podcast work. So I got a couple of microphones and gear, but I can't do carry on only. I don't think I have that much clothes. I have maybe 5 t-shirts and then a couple of jackets for different purposes, and I got 1 pair of shoes and some flip-flops. So I don't think, but I cannot do carry on only. I wish I could. Sometimes when I'm going on a round trip in a country and I'm going back to, like when I was in Ghana last year, I was in Accra, and I was going around the country, and then I would be coming back to Accra. So I had them take care of my suitcase and then travel around the world with my backpack only and my computer bag, and that was possible. But for all the time, I can't do carry on only. So I do have a suitcase with me,
right?
And it's a
I
big
do.
one.
So, yeah, sometimes I check a bag, an 80 or 90 liter big North Face thing. It's actually in Bulgaria. And then recently I've been doing carry on only. And I also have 1 pair of shoes and a pair of Birkenstocks, the rubbery kind, so I can use that as a shower. But Anya, my tip is, if you're kind of following the sun and going to good weather, and then all of a sudden you go to a place where it's cold, try to at least have 1 outfit that's, for cold weather, and then try to find a secondhand clothing store and just buy a bunch of clothes there and use it while you're there, and then donate it, or, whatever, when you leave. That's what we've done in the past.
And it's actually also, that's the only souvenir I buy. It's a t-shirt sometimes. So I have a fair collection of t-shirts that's in my storage unit back in Denmark. So then I go back and then unload those t-shirts. So yeah, it's like what I remember, that and the smallest money bill from every country. So yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, it's hard to buy a lot of stuff. When I was backpacking around the world years ago, I would buy paintings, you know, like rolled up things, and ship a lot of stuff back to the States, Morocco and Thailand. There's so many great countries where you want to buy stuff. Let's talk about, you know, how do you plan the destination? So you got your list of 118 you've gone to, and then you have the ones you want to go to. When you're looking at it, how do you choose where to go next? You just throw a dart at the map, or what?
Yeah, sometimes. One of my clients is a conference called TBEX for travel content creators. Some of you people might know it, and I'm co-hosting and producing their podcast. So whenever they have a conference, and that's 3 or 4 times a year around the world, I go to those. So that is why I was in Europe at a time, because there was just a conference in Greece. And that's why I went on the other side of the Atlantic, because they had their North American one in Wisconsin. And then when I get there, I'm thinking, okay, instead of flying back across the ocean, let me see, is there anything I want to see here? And I was in the US, and I thought, well, I haven't been to Belize, so let me go and do that. And that should be a nice place. I did not check the weather. Maybe I should have done that, because it was crazy hot. And then, well, I basically said to Amanda, my oldest daughter, that I wanted to give her a trip, and I was on that side of the Atlantic. So tell me where you want to go. And we went back and forth and had a short list. And like I said, Cuba was on that list, and then Mexico was on as well. And I had been to Mexico, but I heard so much about Playa del Carmen as a digital nomad, because it's a bit of a hotspot. So I said, would you like to go to Playa del Carmen in Mexico? Because there's a lot of history around. There's good food. There's a wonderful beach. And she came over, and we had 2 weeks together in Playa del Carmen, and it was so great having her there. And apart from a plane ticket and some entrance tickets to different places, it wouldn't, like the accommodation, we stayed at a co-living space with just a simple little room that we could share, and that would been the same price if it was just me alone. So it wasn't extra in that sense, having her there. But it was so great having her, and she was very good at keeping me busy. Is like, come on, Dad, we got to do something today. And under normal circumstances, I would maybe just have done nothing. But yeah, it was great trip with her.
Yeah, my girls and I, we spent 6 months in Playa del Carmen, and I had my car there. So we were able to drive around to all the cenotes and some ruins and stuff. Really great deal. So can you help give some tips about how to find good deals on either air travel or, I don't know, accommodations? How do you, I mean, because you're kind of fast traveling, you're not staying longer to get those monthly discounts, but do you have any hacks or tips?
I don't know if it's a hack. I simply use Skyscanner, and I used to search in incognito mode. I don't do that anymore, because our mutual friend Nora Dunn, that was also in Bansko, she knows a lot about that. She says it's not necessary.
It's a myth.
Yeah, sometimes it can help to put your VPN in another country, or go directly to the website and change the currency. So I try to play around with that sometimes, and sometimes I also go to Momondo just to make a similar search there, but it's normally almost the same price that I get. I sometimes go into Skyscanner and search from here to anywhere if I'm not fixed on where I want to go, or change the dates, because I'm normally very flexible as to where I'm going. But yeah, I don't know. And then as for Accommodation, I use Airbnb a lot, and then I also, if I may, give a little shout out to my own platform. It's called Hotels25, and it's a thing where you can search all kinds of accommodation, but it searches Booking.com, Hotels.com, Agoda, Expedia, Kayak, all of them at the same place, plus 15 sites that you probably never heard of, and you get comparable prices with the exact same room, which can be cheaper on a site that you wouldn't normally search on. So
Okay.
it's a great tool.
Yeah, let's later on, if you could just put it in the chat in the Facebook group, because that's a great tip. Do you ever buy one-way tickets? And if so, do you ever get harassed by when you're checking into the airline about onward tickets?
I almost always, 95% of the time, buy a one-way ticket. And sometimes, yeah, that happens, that and it's not necessarily the country, but it's the airline that say you have to have a return ticket or an onward ticket. I was going from Spain to Colombia at some point, and I thought, I've got no hurry going on the plane. So I was the last in line, and he said, oh, can I see your return ticket? And I said, I don't have that. Oh, you gotta have that, otherwise we'll close the door and you can't get on the plane. So I quickly went on where I go when I need that. And that is to a website called onwardticket.com. It's a website that's built for nomads, and you pay a fee. I think it's around $10. It might be $7, it might be $12. And then you get a real ticket, and then they cancel it the next day once you're there. So it's a real ticket that your name is on it, and so if they check it, it's valid. But then you just pay the fee, and it's all good. So I use that a lot.
I've heard mixed things about it. I heard it works sometimes. So because the mixed things, I just go on Expedia and I try to get the airport early in case this happens. And I buy a ticket. In the US, they have a law where you can buy a ticket and cancel it within 24 hours for a full refund. So that's what I typically do, and just make sure to cancel it on time, you know. But sorry, do you have another tip on that?
No, that's the one I'm using. Some visas require that you can show a reservation for your first nights in a country where you're staying. That was an issue when I was traveling in Western Africa to a lot of those countries, and there I would just go on a place where I could book a room and then cancel it after, and then sometimes I actually end up staying there. And I have also been buying a plane ticket. Actually, that was what I did when I was in Spain, just hurrying to. I thought, okay, I'm going to be in Colombia, say a month. I was really stressed out, and then I thought, well, where am I going to go? Where can I go? And then I came up with Panama. So let me go to Panama. So I bought that ticket, and the only thing was that I ended up wanting to stay 2 months, and I didn't cancel it. I just changed the dates on it, which was something I could do for a small fee. But I actually ended up using that ticket, and I've had that happen before, where I needed an onward ticket when I was in Dubai, going to somewhere in Asia, the Philippines, and then they said you have to have an onward ticket, and I at the airport bought a ticket to Hong Kong and ended up using it.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. So you are a wealth of information and knowledge on this. I wanted to ask, what have been your favorite countries out of the 118 you've been so far?
Yeah, that's always the question I don't like, because it's so hard. It's almost like choosing between your children.
Yeah, but top 5 or 10 favorite countries. List a bunch of them quickly.
Well, I like I already said, I love South Africa, and I love Cape Town. It's become a little bit more tricky in the last couple of years, but I still love it, and I still consider it my second home. I absolutely loved New Zealand and Australia. I was there earlier this year, and great countries as well. I love so many countries around the world, and I'm not being European, and it's sort of my backyard. I'm not even thinking about it how much, but there are so many great places in Europe. Like I'm here in Krakow, is a great city. Berlin, Barcelona, all of Italy, all of the UK. There's so many places there as well, and obviously Central America, and yeah, I'm going back to Brazil on the Nomad cruise in December, so I'm going to spend my second New Year's Eve on Copacabana, which is going to be awesome. So I can't wait for that as well. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
What about Asia? What's your favorite country, or the last one or two countries in Asia?
See, I totally forgot about Asia. There's well, Thailand is obviously great. The Philippines is one of those places I really want to go back to, and I want to go back and do more in Indonesia as well. And I've been to quite a few places in Asia, but I still have a lot of places that I want to go back to.
Do you feel like you've been choosing your favorite countries and places you want, and then country number 193 is going to be the least desirable country to you? You're kind of ticking off like the most interesting ones for you?
Yeah, it might be the case. I'm trying to do some of the difficult ones and some of the more challenging ones. I've done I think 25 countries in Africa. So I've done a lot of the countries in Africa, also some of the less obvious ones, like I've been to Burundi and Rwanda. Rwanda, by the way, is awesome as well, and such a clean and orderly country. It's really nice. It's going around the capital of Rwanda is like walking around in Japan when it comes to how clean it is, which is very surprising. Yeah, I need to go to South Sudan and Somalia before, not as the last. Yeah, I need to tick those because they're not high on my bucket list of places I really want to go to. But then I end up going, and it's probably going to be awesome.
Yeah. Some places are really tricky. Let's talk about safety, especially, the rest of us are usually traveling with kids under 18 years old. So safety, I mean, you're an adult man, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit easier for you. I don't know. But have you been in situations, and what are your tips for being safer? Like, don't hang out in the red light district at midnight.
Yeah. That's basically it. Don't walk down a dark alley in the middle of the night, being obviously drunk. Don't do that. Walk in groups if you're in a place where it might not be safe, and use your common sense. Take an Uber instead of walking if you feel unsafe. From door to door, and maybe even say, well, can you please stay here by the side of the road until I go into the gate in this gated area, like that's a lot of in South Africa, and in many other places. But basically remember that the world is not as scary as a lot of people make it out to be. 99.9% of all the people in the world are good people that want to be friendly, and they're just curious, and they have the same wants and desires, want to have a good life and safety for their kids. And so remember that, but use your common sense. And I also bring my weapon, which is my smile, and I try to smile to people, and that helps a lot as well. But use my common sense is my best advice.
Great,
and
great.
I've never been in any situations at all in those 7 years, not a single time.
Never been pickpocketed?
I've been, somebody tried to pickpocket me, but actually 50 meters from where I'm sitting right now, late at night here in Krakow. Yeah, but no, never.
Yeah, I put little locks on things and these little S hooks, and I travel with a thin bicycle chain to I have like little ways not to get pickpocketed. And somebody years ago when I was young tried to steal money from me in Frankfurt, and I put the teenage boy in a headlock. So and I got my money back. So it was very spontaneous. I don't even know why. Anyway, yeah, we've got some people watching. So any last minute questions, guys, before Palle goes? And tell us more about your Radio Vagabond podcast and where people can find you on social media.
Yeah, well, as you said, the podcast is called The Radio Vagabond, and I bring my microphone anywhere and do a lot of recordings wherever I'm walking around, whether it's like the episode where I went scuba diving in the cenotes. I didn't bring my microphone underwater, but that's what my episode was about. So I had a lot of conversations in the Dos Ojos cenotes with my instructor, and as we were in the car. So it's a lot of stuff that's recorded on site. Sometimes I do interviews, but it's mostly with the locals and people I meet along the way. So it's that kind of podcast, and it's called The Radio Vagabond, and that's where you can find me. All over the interweb. I'm everywhere as a radio vagabond.
Yeah. And I think you're the Radio Vagabond is in English, and then Radio Vagabond is in Danish, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Palle, this has been so great. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and all your tips. So I think you're in our Facebook group. So Worldschooling, Traveling Digital Nomad, Trailblazing Families. And so if people have questions for you, hopefully you can check in the chat later, and I'll also upload this to my YouTube channel. So yeah, thank you, Palle. This has been really fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to meet you again somewhere in the world.
We do. We definitely need to do that. And we have people in the chat giving you lots of claps. So, yeah. All right, awesome.
Bring your kids next time.
I will. That's true. You haven't met my kids. Yeah, we were in Bansko, and I wasn't with my kids then. But one of these days, maybe we'll do the Nomad cruise, because I heard you can bring kids. It's not just a party thing.
Oh yes.
So I will try to.
No. It's not a party thing. No, it's perfect for kids. Some are bringing even small kids. So absolutely, Nomad cruise, and the next one is from Tenerife in Spain to Barcelona. We set sails, so to speak, on December 2nd, and then we'll be in Brazil. A couple of weeks later. So
I'm gonna miss that.
And then we hang out there. Then we stay there.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm gonna miss that one. Usually, like at Nomad Fest, I like to give a talk about yes, you can be a digital nomad with kids, because I think a lot of digital nomads think, oh, I can never have kids because then I have to move back to my home country and put them in school. And I'm trying to tell them, no, you don't have to. You can world school them. So awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you, Palle. It was great to chat with you. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. I'm Lizz Quain. My twins and I have been traveling and world schooling for about 7 years, and I'm happy to share our experiences. Make sure to check out all the other videos on my channel. I have a playlist of interviews of fascinating world school families and service providers who share lots of info and wisdom about world schooling, traveling, and the digital nomad family lifestyle. If you're new to world schooling or have recently launched and are struggling because you're kind of winging it, if you need some help, I do have a super comprehensive 12-week program on how to world school and travel extensively as a family. I share lots of info on travel logistics, where to go, how to find community, how to immerse yourself into local cultures, and the variety of ways to educate your kids while traveling above and beyond homeschooling them yourself, and much, much more. Make sure to watch my free 2-hour masterclass on how to become a world schooling trailblazing family. That is a great way to learn how to get started. I'll include a link in the description with more info. Thanks and happy trails.